So just I'm gonna go over a couple of terms that you will hear in our time together. In case you don't know them, I just want to have like maybe some shared understandings about what I mean, at least when I'm saying them. So cisgender is a word that describes a person whose gender identity aligns with their assigned sex at birth. Um, this is basically so people who are not transgender. And I think this is really important to start, getting used to, so you might hear me say cis, which is short for cisgender. Um, but it's really important, right, to be able to name cisgender so that, I believe that as long as we only ever name those who are othered, they will always remain othered. So if we say, we only say, oh, someone is transgender, but we never talk about someone who is cisgender, the unspoken assumption is that cisgender is normal and transgender is not normal. And that is actually a very violent assumption that, again, like around our language is going to be very important for us to, to shift how we speak about people and their identities so that we don't perpetuate or create the very harm that we're hoping to help eradicate. So cisgender, transgender, and then, of course, there are many folk, who don't maybe necessarily fall underneath either of those umbrellas, so like non-binary folk, genderqueer folk, and that's like in a longer, terms of list that I have elsewhere. But for these purposes, cisgender, transgender, and under that umbrella, you have maybe folk who are like non-binary, etc. And then there's the word queer. And so this is it tends to be, it's an umbrella term essentially, to refer to like all LGBTQ plus folk. Um, it's a kind of a simple label to try to explain a complex set of identities, sexual behaviors, and desires, and or advocates for breaking binary thinking and seeing both sexual orientation and gender identity as potentially fluid. Um, so all that to say, basically, I tend to use it as a catch-all term. And though in my time in Salas centers, I was working with older LGBTQ folk, I found that as comfortable as I am with the word and as empowering as I find it to be, and especially as someone who is gender queer, I find that that kind of captures more fully, the fluidity of my sexuality and gender. Um, it actually was a word that was creating harm for folk who grew up with it as a disgusting a slur. And so I offer this word of caution, that not everybody is going to feel this word as empowering. And really just kind of the rule of thumb is, use the language that people use to describe themselves. So if someone calls themselves gay, I will talk about them as gay, um, and it's really good to ask as well, I don't make assumptions.